schools box that I'm looking at? We are recording.
We are good to
Okay,
go.
thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 23rd special meeting. We have an exciting update of our reentry plan. Things are changing and moving quickly, and I look forward to learning more about the details of that. Let's see, Jamie, can you call the roll, please?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Lassane,
Present.
Director Berg,
Present.
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Salzman, would you like to say a few words about tonight's agenda before we get going?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, President Mason, Board of Directors, and to our public, good evening. Tonight's agenda is the reopening status as we give you an update, and we thoroughly think you'll enjoy it, but most of all, it'll be informative. So I want to turn it back to President Mason, and thanks for having us today.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and adopt the agenda by general consent unless there is some discussion. Hearing none, I am going to turn things over to Kathy Reeves to get us started.
Thank you, and I will share my screen, I hope. Do you see the full thing?
Not quite. There we go. That's good.
Okay, excellent. Well, today is our monthly update for the school reopening, and we're really excited about tonight's presentation because you'll see a bunch of new pictures because we have a bunch of little kids back in the classrooms. And so we have some great pictures in our presentation tonight to show you some things that are happening in the buildings and the excitement that being back in the buildings has shown. We're going to talk briefly about the remote learning. We'll give you a staffing update, continued health and safety updates, and then a little bit about communications at the end. And also during remote learning, we have some educators who are here to share about things that they are doing. And I love this little guy who's welcoming back everybody first day of school.
In previous updates, I've shared with you attendance numbers during remote learning, as well as tools we are using to drill down and track student engagement in order to best provide intervention supports. This evening, I'm showing you some attendance data as we have now entered stage 3 with attendance numbers K-12 specific to the type of learning modality we have of on-site, remote, and asynchronous. And this is a 2-week snapshot beginning January 27th. We have over 500 students who are enrolled, but we don't take daily attendance for, such as our Grad Alliance, Homeschool, and Running Start students. That number is reflected on this report. The in-person column is the number of students reporting on site, and you can see where we started K1 on February 8th and how the total number present jumps dramatically. The asynchronous learning days are reflected in column 3, and you can see where on February 10th, the change for Wednesday async at elementary began. On previous Wednesdays, it was only secondary schools. And our synchronous remote learning numbers are in that column are those students who have elected to remain remote or haven't yet phased in. At the start of the school year, Canvas began to expand their video content options for students, and we have seen data that shows how video content is growing. So this report I wanted to share with you, Canvas Studio, which launched in September. It allows for instructional interactive video content. It can include something like a teacher instructional video and quizzes or questions that enable the student to interact with its content. It's sort of like a YouTube instructional video where a teacher has added comments and questions. It allows for collaboration through audio and video and makes video instructional, and it can easily be shared with colleagues. You can see on this slide the number of videos recorded, which continues to grow. Also, I have here media recordings through Canvas. That's the number of content and responses in total that students and staff have recorded since September. Overall, what this tells us is that video content for instructional purposes has become an integral part of teacher instruction. We continue to see parent access as an important part of remote learning, and I have the number of unique parent accounts for both Canvas and Gradebook. We do see a large number of parents accessing student accounts by logging in as a student, which does make sense since a lot of our parents have been working alongside their students during the day. Gradebook, I've included this report, has about 3,000 parent accounts, but we saw a dramatic increase in gradebook during the month of January because it's the end of the semester. There were 165,000 logins in that month of January, just leading up to the end of the semester. Online enrollment continues to be a tool for us since the start of the school year. We enrolled 2,000 new students using this method, and now we've expanded to updates. From December to mid-January, over 4,000 forms have been updated, 500 in process. Lastly, our district communication tool, I show a little different representation here of the data for you. We've seen a steady increase in the number of active staff and parent users through the course of the year. And looking at the data, we're seeing a higher access point for all users, including staff, is the use of the app rather than the web version. We're also seeing that parents and students are one of the primary ways they're getting the information is by text. And that's exciting because that was one of the primary reasons we went to Remind, so we could communicate with our parents and students through a texting feature. And we see that that is, in fact, how many are using it. Our technology support numbers for computers and hotspots checked out have remained steady. We continue to make exchanges with devices that have breakage or in need of warranty repair. We have seen a steady increase in the number of our qualifying families that have taken advantage of the OSPI K-12 Internet Access Program, which provides free internet through the rest of the school year from Comcast, Presidio, or Ziply. It's a nice option for our families, more reliable connection than a hotspot, and that continues to increase by the week of the number of families that we're able to connect with that resource. As we have moved through the months, our work orders, as we continue to track, have decreased. And so our number of work orders completed has also decreased. But our top two help desk topics, we track Zoom connection and authentication. We recently updated security with Zoom, so we've had a number of those in recent weeks, days for being able to connect to different meetings and troubles with that. Lastly, we have created parent documents in Parent University for all of these top help desk topics that provide resources for our families for some self-help guides, but they also reach out by contacting the help desk in person.
We are very excited to announce that we opened our stage 3 with a successful return of kindergarten, transitional kindergarten, and first grades on February 8th. We were so excited to see our students back. This was a true all hands on deck event. We ensured that even our CRC staff were out supporting our schools, assisting in arrivals, recess. I think Dr. Golden spent all day assisting in a transitional kindergarten classroom. But we really worked hard to ensure that we had a smooth transition. In preparation for stage 4A, we are in process of gearing up to bring 2nd and 3rd grade students back safely, staffing and coordinating classes. In anticipation for this change that happens on March 1st, we are providing teachers with 2 asynchronous days to implement that stage change, where students are engaged in directed independent learning in order to accommodate that smooth transition for both staff and students. Therefore, this Thursday and Friday, February 25th and 26th, will be 2 asynchronous days that we are loading with teacher-directed independent learning so that we don't have loss of learning for those students. Teachers who provide those services to students in other grade levels will continue to provide services on those days. And these days apply to all classroom teachers and students in 2nd and 3rd grade, whether they're returning to the building or staying remote, as 2nd and 3rd grade teachers prepare to transition to hybrid instruction. We're all doing our very best to help prepare and support our staff in hybrid and in remote. And we're very excited to announce that we just announced stage 4B, 4th and 5th grade reentry into hybrid will be on March 15th.
And as has been our practice in the reentry status updates, we're very excited tonight to hear from several teachers who have experienced the hybrid teaching model now for several weeks. We wanted to welcome Tammy Whipple, kindergarten teacher from Cedarwood Elementary, Lori Beavers, first grade teacher at View Ridge, and Caroline Lefebvre, extended resource teacher at Madison. And later we're going to hear from Everett High School principal Amanda Overly as to a secondary structures development as well. And I'm going to ask Kelly Clevenger to assist in moderating this discussion, as I'll sort of serve as primary moderator, specifically when we talk with Caroline about her extended resource program. So Tammy, we're going to start with you, and thanks for being here again. As we return to in-person instruction, Tammy, what's one celebration or success story you can share with us about having students return so far?
Well, my a success story really pertains to one particular student. I have a little girl in my classroom, and she speaks only Spanish at home, and her family only speaks Spanish. And she had never gone to preschool before. So online kindergarten was her very first experience of school. And so as you can imagine, it was really hard engaging her over Zoom, and trying to teach her and have her participate was challenging because she just didn't understand what was going on and what was expected of her. And she did participate a little more during small group instruction over Zoom, but her progress was still very slow. And on her first day of hybrid, when she came, she talked more than I had ever heard her any day or any time. The whole time on Zoom, she talked more. I was like, oh my gosh, she has a voice. And then also, we were doing some sight word games. And prior to hybrid, she knew 2 sight words from September to February. She could only tell me 2 sight words. We were doing a game on the 3rd day of our hybrid, and a sight word game, and she could rattle off 8 of the sight words playing this game. And another time we were in class and we were partner reading. We were still 6 feet apart, but they were partner reading their little books. And she took her turn reading, her partner did, and she was reading, her simple, words, but she was still reading. And it almost made me want to cry to see her with her book in her hand, reading with a partner. It was just so amazing. And the last thing I wanted to add to that about her success isn't an academic success. It's that I see her talking to other children, and she never did that over Zoom. She only talked to me. And so now she's in class talking to other kids. And I just think that is beyond a success right there.
That is awesome. Can you guys get the sense that if you've ever been in Tammy's class at Cedarwood, you know that she's high energy? I think that's a prerequisite for all kindergarten teachers. Yeah. Imagine now that your teacher is no longer on Zoom, and now you get to experience her in person. So awesome. Thank you, Tammy. We're going to move to Lori. Lori, same question. What's one celebration or success story that you could share with us?
Well, I think that it just on that first day, as Tammy mentioned, just the faces on the kids, they were so excited to be in school. I have a little boy named Van who came to our last material pickup. I think it was the Friday or so before the 8th. And he was like, I get to be in school with you. And so he, just the excitement on their faces was just great. Another excitement, maybe parents weren't jumping up and down, but they definitely had smiles on their faces when they were letting their kids go and then picking them up, and just excited to see that, back to school, that routine was great. Other successes are just, as Tammy mentioned, those kids that struggle so much with online learning, just that they got on like some programs for the first time, and they were so excited. Hey, now I know what you're talking about. And I can do this all by myself, and I can get onto iReady all by myself now because I know how to do it. And so the success they felt that, hey, I did something you've been telling me to do since September, but I've never really known how or gotten the help how. So those are some successes that I've seen.
So thank you, Lori. And so I have the pleasure of introducing Caroline Lefevre, and we also brought back extended resource and achieve students on February 8th. And Caroline, can you share with us some celebrations and successes?
I have many celebrations and successes, but I will try to narrow it down.
First, extended resource is comprised of varying learning needs. So when we were in remote, it's hard to meet all those learning needs, though we did do it. It's hard for students with with things going on in their home and stuff to focus on their learning. But when they came into the building on the first day, they completely embraced the learning experience. We had the hands-on manipulatives. We had they could see the big books finally for real, like they had a chance to see that REACH curriculum up close. They followed the directions. I mean, they went above and beyond, and we had every single student that said they were coming back hybrid return to the building the first day. So we were in full attendance, and it was just amazing to see these young students. They were only first and second graders, rise to the occasion and jump right in with their learning and completely enjoy themselves.
I can attest to that. I was in that classroom the first day and they were so amazing.
Thank you, Caroline and Lori and Tammy. I'm going to switch to the second prompt here. Because there were a lot of unknowns, obviously, when we were launching, things that we expected that happened, things that we expected things that we didn't expect. Can you highlight a few? What were you surprised by? What did you expect? And then what were one or two things that you were surprised by?
Well, one of the things I wasn't surprised, but they were very excited to return to school. And the students, some of the parents emailed me the day after their first day of school. And I just want to read a couple of the response emails that I got from parents, or quotes that they put in their email. One mother said that her son said it was just mega fun. And another parent said, "Thank you so much. My son's mood and energy yesterday afternoon were the best we've seen in months." And then another parent said, "Thank you so much. My daughter was mad tonight when I told her there was a vacation next week because of the winter break." So I mean, I wasn't surprised that they'd be happy, but I am a little surprised just about the overwhelmingness of, we are ready to be at school. We are excited. I wasn't sure how the kids would be at being 6 feet apart and being at their own table, being spread out, wearing a mask all day. And to my surprise, because they are so eager to be at school, I have not had one complaint about wearing a mask at all. They follow the rules. They're at their desks. They're happy. We did, like I said earlier, we did some partner reading, and I think it went better 6 feet apart than they do elbow to elbow on a normal year, because they were following along in their book, helping each other. I guess I was surprised by just how well they went with the flow. They know they have to wear their mask. They know there are these rules we need to follow, and they're not saying, "Oh, I don't want to do that." They're just going right along with it. So that was kind of a surprise, or kind of a happy.
Thanks, Tammy. And Lori, same thing with respect to how students responded. What did you expect, and what were you surprised by?
Well, I knew that they had 6 months of school, so I was expecting them to kind of know the routine of school. So they all, walking in a line. They even remember at View Ridge, we have little signs that we have to have 0 voices in the hallway, and some of them were doing that. So I was kind of expecting that some of that would come back, and it did. I expected, we were going to have an academic schedule, and so we've kind of, melded into that. But like Tammy, I was very surprised about them wearing masks. I had one little girl who was eating her breakfast, and then all of a sudden when she was done, she goes, "Oh, where's my mask?" I was just surprised that they were even thinking about that kind of thing. So they definitely are not having a hard time with their mask. And then 6 feet apart, we do the zombie walk in the hallway, and they kind of understand that I got to stay away. And so they I was surprised that they kind of have a sense of their bubble, where they need to be. Getting a computer or a Chromebook during our time here in the classroom, they know they have to wait. And so I was surprised by that, because in the past, they just crowd or those kinds of things. So yeah, so those are some of the surprises.
Caroline, how about you?
Well,
Surprises.
yeah, the masks and the social distancing were honestly our biggest concerns when we were preparing. We may have had a lower expectation than maybe we should have, but we were prepared that, all students deserve an education to learn. So when they came off those buses with their masks on and they kept them on, and they were like, oh, we can't stand next to each other. They're already telling each other that, they were ready to follow the rules, even to like come in from recess and not crowd the closet. They like went to their seats and waited to put their jacket away and things like that. It was amazing. And we have some little masketeers in our classroom, if I can find a word for it, but they gently correct each other when they're not wearing the mask properly. Like, oh, it has to go over your nose. Or one little girl's like, you almost had it right. And it's just so cute that they're not trying to be mean to their friends, but trying to help them to keep everybody safe.
Thanks y'all for sharing that. And the final prompt here is we know that every launch is not without challenges. And what would you say remains the greatest challenge about teaching in the hybrid model? We'll start with you, Tammy.
The greatest challenge is, quite honestly, only having the kids 2 days per week, because they just get going. And I just see how they need a teacher 5 days a week to give them that specific instruction and individualized instruction. And then for them to leave for 3 days, it's really hard. And I know the parents are working really hard and the kids are working on their asynchronous work. And it's not them not trying. It's just that I see the things that I want to help them with, and just being able to see them only 2 days, that's the challenging part.
Thanks. How about you, Lori?
Well, I had a couple, but anyway, I think one challenge, I teach first grade, so I have a team of 4, and so we've split our team kind of 2 in person and 2 remote, and so I want our team to be still unified as a team, and I don't want us to break up into 2 different types of learning, and so I'm trying as hard as I can to be as intentional as I can to make sure my team is still a team of 4. And so to make sure that, I'm texting, and to make sure, how are you doing this? And, can we meet so we can coordinate materials and all those things, so that we're still a team. And then to kind of piggyback off of what Tammy said, I think another big challenge with first grade is those 3 days by themselves. And so that asynchronous work and working with the parents to make sure they understand what I have, and how can I create it so that they are engaging and in the whole online piece without a teacher to guide them. So yeah, so that's been a challenge, just to figure out how that piece is put together. And it's just not a bunch of busy work and a bunch of videos for them to watch, but something that's actually meaningful, and that they understand kind of what they need to do.
How about you, Caroline?
Well, I don't consider this a challenge, maybe more of an adjustment, but I have been teaching primary extended resource for the last 5 years. And now I have the privilege of teaching 1 through 5. So that means I have primary on one day and intermediate on the other grouping. So really it's that jump between curriculum, the level of rigor, it just changes. So we finished with primary, and then on Wednesday, I spend a couple hours like changing my mindset. Okay, we got to come to this level now, we got to rise up here. So I feel like honestly, it seems a little time consuming right now, but I feel like in a few short weeks, it will seem familiar.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So this is kind of our time, our breather time, traditionally, to have any board member who'd like to make a comment or ask a question. I'll turn it back over to President Mason to facilitate that part. If you'd like to do that now or at the end while we have these folks.
I think now's a great time to take a pause. So thank you very much. And I just want to thank Tammy, Lori, and Caroline so much for your insight. It's always a highlight of a meeting to have the educators here helping us better understand what it really looks like, what school looks like right now, because it's very different. It's changing constantly. So thank you for taking your time tonight to be here with us. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to other directors if they have questions. I guess really at this point, questions of the teachers that are here with us or questions of any of the material that we've covered thus far.
Well, I can start. I don't really have any questions. You guys are just doing an amazing job. And I just wanted to give you feedback that I have heard just wonderful things from parents, kiddos who are super happy to be back in class. And I just truly cannot just thank you enough for all the work you're doing. And the slides at the beginning were really helpful to contextualize it all. So thanks.
My question for you folks is how are the students and families engaging in the asynchronous days? What's your experience been like in your classrooms as far as bumps in the road, things that would be helpful, things like that? Or if everything's going fine?
I can start in most, I would say probably 95% of the kids engage in their asynchronous work. We do iReady, literacy footprints, which is books that are online at their reading level. And then we also give like a packet of materials for them to do throughout the day, and also recorded video lessons from us that will go over a lesson. So they have 3 days of work to do, and they are working through that work. So I would say there's just those few kids that they don't have the support at home during the day to complete it, or the English to follow along with it. And so that's what makes it challenging for those families to complete the asynchronous work.
I actually this week I started something new to help them. I kind of made over the weekend a checklist. So I kind of have a column of a must do and a may do. And some parents have already commented, because every Sunday night I send out an email to parents and I kind of put it in my email, and then the kids brought it home laminated so they could use a dry erase marker and kind of check off things. But parents were very excited that it kind of laid out their day, some things that they needed to do as far as morning work and reading and writing and math and science. And so it kind of helped them to see it and how they could break it up. And I know we put times on them, do this between 1 and 1:30 or whatever, but it's really up to them how they schedule their family day and their family time. And so I've got some pretty positive feedback. So I'm hoping that I see some more growth in that asynchronous work and things being turned in.
I feel like it's gone really well on asynchronous time. I'm seeing good time spent in iReady. Work is coming back completed in their folders. I'm getting emails from parents saying that the work is a continuation of their learning. They understand how to do it. I've also sent family letters home and translated them when necessary to our English language speaking families. But I have received positive feedback, and I would say, I think of the 2 times we've done the asynchronous session on Wednesday, I think I only have 1 or 2 students of my combined group missing.
So it's pretty much, it's going well on the whole. We're working out the kinks. but there still may be a few students per class that need kind of additional support that are lacking either home support or there's language barriers or things like that that we need to find a way to address. Okay, thank you.
I would really like to thank Caroline and Tammy and Lori for all your efforts that you've been doing, and thank you so much for coming today to mention the things that you've been doing. I appreciate that most definitely. I have a question for Lori. You mentioned, and it will always be a challenge with the 2 days a week that we have our kids, but you mentioned the team of 4. You know, you want to continue with that team of 4. Will there be a time in which you foresee that team of 4 may change, and what type of effect would that have on our students as far as, you know, working through challenges and making sure that they're constantly seeing the same teacher or the same person over and again that will help them navigate the week?
Yeah, I hope I understand your question, but yeah, so I have four on my team. So there's 4 first grade teachers in my building. 2 of us are in person and 2 of us are remote. And so we, at the very beginning of the year, we split up subjects, right? So I do all the math lessons and a partner does all the science lessons and those kinds of things. And we share those. And so the kids have seen all 4 of us all year. And so in a way, they kind of know us all already. But in my intention and to be intentional, I want us 4 to continue to work together, and that we, you know, work out problems. So it's not just a remote learning problem, but maybe it's, you know, an all first grade problem that we can help and use our brains together to solve. So yeah, I don't know if I answered that question, Pam, but yeah, I think the kids, they see us all during material pickups. They've seen us all on video. I had one little girl on Valentine's Day give a box of candy hearts to all 4 of us. And I'm like, oh, I don't have Mrs. Scott or Mrs. Albert here, but I will make sure they get them. So I think the kids see us as a team. And so I want them to continue to see us like that.
And that's what I meant. You answered the question.
Yeah.
And just being able to have that consistent view of who do I run to? Who do I go to if I'm having a challenge here or there? And, you know, having that consistent team is very important. Yeah. And my question is, are you unique in this, or is every school doing this for their kids?
Oh, is my team unique in sharing? I don't think so. At least at View Ridge, I think that all teachers are working together as a team, and that they're all sharing responsibilities and doing things. We were lucky as far as first grade with our numbers, how we could take the 4 of us and kind of divide us equally, you know, 2 and 2. I know some grade levels aren't quite like that because they maybe have an odd number of teachers in their grade level. But yeah, and I think as a group, as a staff, you know, I just chatted with the gal that's coming into 2nd grade during my lunch today, and she's the only 2nd grade on site. But I said, hey, if you need something, you can come and talk to, you know, me or my partner, Angela, who's here. So hopefully, you know, we all are working together to help each other out.
That's fantastic. That collaboration is very important during these difficult and challenging times. That's fantastic. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Director Lassane, I think the anecdotes that Lori was sharing is really the norm around the 18 elementaries, and so the collaboration is really inspirational in that sense.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I really appreciate your stories, and I think all 3 of you almost made me cry. Because you know, we know that classroom is the best, but we had to keep everyone safe and learn more about this virus, and it just took so much time. And the wee ones were the ones I was most worried about, especially, my daughter at 2 years old could see the bus picking up across the street from the house and didn't understand why she had to get driven to 2-year-old preschool. Why did those kids get on the bus? So to be able to tell that kindergartner who's been waiting for so long to get on the bus, they finally got to get on the bus. But the energy from kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, all K-5 teachers, it's what we need, and we need that same energy K-12. So thank you so much for everything you do and the story you told today.
Thank you. I have one quick question, I think for Brian maybe, which made me realize when Lori was talking, I think it was Lori talking about getting the Chromebooks out. Are students bringing devices each day? Or are they leaving their devices at home and using school devices, or how is that working?
Yes, the kindergarten first and second graders are not having to bring them back and forth, but we have enough to be able to provide a class set for them in the classroom. Our third through fifth graders will be bringing them back and forth when they return.
Okay, thank you. Well, great. If there's no further questions or comments, I think we'll go ahead and move on with the presentation. And I do want to thank teams for joining us as well. So you're welcome to stay. And you're welcome to go get
No,
some.
it's fine. They're talking about reopening.
Kathy, you're not muted.
Are they? Yeah.
Kathy,
Peter, do
So,
you need the
Your mic.
Go.
I'll share with you an interesting conversation I had with my
Kathy Woods.
supervisor earlier
Kathy.
today. We're just giving you a heads up, not to be dramatic or whiny, maybe a little whiny, but
I can't mute her either.
There we go.
Peter, do you need the presentation to go to Amanda?
Yeah, please, just for a minute. So it's our pleasure now. We mentioned that we introduced Amanda Overly, who needs no introduction, really, principal at Everett High School. I'm going to ask Amanda to speak to one of the developments in the secondary schools that we're referring to as the targeted support model. This model would be in place at each of our secondary schools, and it would be modified to meet the needs of the students in each of those secondary schools, all 9 of them, and our staffing within those schools. So Amanda, let's start with this. Talk to us a little bit about the targeted support model prototype. Why do we call this tier 3 support? Another word for the targeted support model is tier 3. And in the end, Amanda, what are you intending to accomplish as a secondary principal with this model?
Hi, thank you, Dr. Scott. Good evening, everybody. So when we talk about the targeted support model, and Dr. Scott's referring to it as tier 3, I would define tier 3 differently during a regular school year than I am operating on now. In this situation, in distance learning, our tier 3 students are students who are really just not being successful. They are farthest away from educational justice. So we're looking at students who have 6 Fs, who have 5 Fs, who are not finding any success. Whereas in a regular school year, a tier 3 student is a student who has gone through extensive intervention and multi-tiered systems of support to reach the tier 3 level. In this case, it's students who are showing us and telling us by their grades that they're not able to be successful in this environment. So that's what I would say about why are we referring to it as tier 3. And those students are being unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. Many of the students we find are struggling with just staying motivated. They don't have the support at home. They don't have a quiet place. They're caretaking. A lot of our struggling students are struggling with executive functioning skills. And if you're not familiar with that term, executive function it's a set of mental skills that includes memory and flexible thinking and self-control and self-regulation. And we use these skills as adults to manage our lives and focus and make plans and follow directions. And those executive functioning skills are super, super important. And the lack of them is very evident when a student is sitting on their own at a computer. So we're really targeting the students that are not being successful based on their first semester grades. And what we're hoping to accomplish with this model is to bring them in and get them to pass their classes. I mean, that to be very simplistic about it, we want to provide them the support so that they can pass their classes and reach the 24 credits that we know that they need to graduate.
Thanks, Amanda. So as you explain this model to others, kind of like what you're doing for us tonight, what advantages do you highlight?
So the model that you guys are seeing, I guess, can I just talk about it a little bit in detail? Because
yeah, we know that it's small, and it's
yeah.
This is probably maybe 3/4 of her spreadsheet on this as well, but keep going.
Yeah, so the proposed model would be that we're going to bring in small groups of pods of students, and they will be supervised by classified staff. So paraeducators, success coordinators, kind of an all hands on deck. We're going to have an AM, we plan to have an AM and a PM model, and the paras will be there not to provide direct instruction because we know that they're not instructors. They will be there to support our students with all of the things that I just mentioned. So when we bring the students into the building in their pods, they're going to have access to things they might not have at home. So they're going to be able to access a stable internet, a quiet workspace, headphones with microphones, food security. We have Sammy's Closet here. We have resources we can get to them. More importantly, I think human connection and encouragement, help with the executive functioning skills that I've mentioned. We want to do goal setting every morning, check our grades every morning, see if we need to write an email to our teachers to communicate. And our peers will help them just with all of those things that, you know, we as adults do every day, but our students didn't have a chance to learn these before they were thrust into this environment. So we're really hoping that that's what's going to happen. I think the most important thing that I'm excited about is just the human connection part of it, because that is something that our students are lacking, and just to have a trusted adult to come and see a couple of times a week to help keep you on track, set your goals, to celebrate your goals when you do achieve them. I think it's going to make a world of difference for our students. And the students that we found are farthest away from educational justice in this environment are typically underserved populations, like our free and reduced lunch students, and our EL students are suffering more than others, special education students, and certain subgroups in terms of ethnicity.
Yeah. So Amanda, what are some cautions about this model that you've needed and your colleagues have needed to consider at this stage?
Cautions, I would just say the logistics of making sure that we're doing it safely, and that when we do start communicating this out to parents, they understand that this is not a replacement for the certificated teacher. This is a support model. We're here to support your students in every way, right? With organization and all of that. I think just being really clear about how we communicate this model is paramount.
Thanks, Amanda. So as we plan for this targeted support model to be implemented, we are penciling in mid-March in our 9 secondary schools. We're thinking about it as a runway. You can think of a metaphor of a runway or an on-ramp built to support students who are struggling in the remote learning with in-person supports, as Amanda had described. One additional significant model we're exploring, not to replace the targeted support model, but to expand it in direct in-person services to students, is what is known as the concurrent learning model. So in the concurrent learning model, student schedules would remain intact, and depending on the group students would be in, they would alternate in-person and at home learning. So sort of this A or B group, but be experiencing classroom instruction at the same time. So we will be exploring this model with our association and working on those infrastructure pieces that would support it. So variables like what we've heard a little bit earlier tonight, like technology, transportation, food service, and the like, student information systems, the infrastructure behind building a model like that. And again, the concurrent model would be an expansion and a complement to what we've heard here for this tier 3 targeted support model that Amanda just described. So,
Debbie, you're on mute.
Debbie, you're still on mute.
Before Debbie starts, could we take a minute for directors to, I mean, this whole targeted support model is kind of something new for us to better understand. And I want to thank Amanda, Principal Overly, for being with us this evening. Did a great job of really walking us through this. And it seems like just such a great, and in my eyes, an obvious next step for the students that are struggling. I'm kind of curious and would like to ask, are you seeing, so 2 questions. One, is this across all grade levels that you feel it's pretty equal, or certain grade levels, you know, for example, seniors that need to graduate and stuff, suffering more or need more support? And then is it more than you see in a typical year? Has the pandemic really taken its toll, or are these just the students that normally we would have in schools and be able to support, you know, in person, and we're not able to do that right now?
So your first question is it even across grade levels? Not really. Thankfully, my seniors are doing a little bit better than the other grade levels. So I don't have as many failures in the 12th grade as I do in 9th through 11th. So I think that's the answer to your first question. Are we seeing more failures during this pandemic than in a regular year? Yeah, we are. The teachers have worked really, really hard on getting kids across. At the beginning of the year, we were pretty high. The teachers and work around our grading practices and what's humane grading practices during a pandemic has really paid off, and our teachers were able to lower our failure rate considerably. But we are finding that the gaps are bigger during the pandemic for the groups that I've already mentioned.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's sort of was my assumption. And I'm hoping, you know, to your point, the human connection is really, you know, supporting them, feeding them, giving them a place to do their homework is going to be helpful when the logistics can get worked out. Do other directors have any questions of Principal Overly?
Just, and maybe this is too soon to ask the kind of logistics of this question, but the students that are being identified for this type of support, are they going to be sort of mandated to come back? Like you're going to be telling the parents, these students really need to be back in these classrooms and need supported, or is it going to be more kind of the opt-in, opt-out like the lower grades were?
So my hope is that we're just gonna have conversations and say, hey, I noticed your students got this and this in the first semester. I think we can help them out. We really, really want to see them on these days so that we can support you. And we know you've been working hard, Mom and Dad, but we think that there's a little more we can do at the school level. I don't know that we could mandate it, but we're going to try to sell it really hard because it's good for students, and they need the connection. And from what I can see, I don't think I'm going to get a lot of pushback on it.
And then is this in a model we're going to be expanding across all the secondary schools, or is this an Everett High specific?
No, I believe all of the secondary schools are working
all
on
9
it.
secondary schools.
Fantastic.
And I just also want to remind folks, you know, our community that because we're in a pandemic, we will never mandate that students have to be in buildings, because there are certainly going to be students that just can't be in buildings, and same with staff as well. And so it's, you know, the encouragement, and those that can and would benefit, certainly we want there as much as possible. But I appreciate that our district has taken the approach that we're giving people choices, you know, when it comes to the health and safety of our families.
And I just have a quick question too on that same note. Are we going to be working with our community partners to help support the kiddos, maybe ones that are a little hesitant or ones that we are having a hard time connecting with?
What, can you let me know like which ones you might be thinking about?
Like kids in transition, or even YMCA's, or any of, I know there's a lot of great extended learning after school partners that we have in the different communities with the high schools. Just any of those that would help out.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thanks for the idea. I'm all for partnering with agencies that will help us. So excellent.
Can I,
Yeah,
can I address
Dr.
that
yeah.
question?
Thanks.
Can I address that question?
Please.
Yeah, so we do have situations where we're partnering with either YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club for students experiencing homelessness. We also have situations where we have some students that mental health has come up and there's some barriers, and we are connecting them to therapists for those individual needs so they can access that in order to access learning. So a lot of that's individual. It's conversations out of categorical programs, the KIT office, to address those individual needs.
Thank you, Chad. That's great to know. And I knew you guys were on top of it. I just wanted to confirm. So thank you.
I have one question on your model here, your targeted support model. It lists Monday through Friday for each of the individual pods, and it also breaks it down to 7:30 to 10:45 and 11 to 2. As you break those, you know, 5, I assume it's 5 students in each one of those different pods. Will they, during the time they are on campus, between those particular hours, will they have resources as to being able to touch base in person with those teachers that they would have while they are on campus? Because I do know that for some kids, having a consistent opportunity to meet with teachers face to face helps solves a lot of the challenges, you know, emotional challenges that they may have.
I don't think that the teachers are the part of the first part of our plan. First, we want to get the kids in and just get them situated and get them access to all the things that I already described. Certainly, we will have counselors and the support people available for our students. We have a family support specialist. We have, you know, success coordinators, administrators that are here to support the kids. I think that's our first step. And then looking at having access to teachers is certainly something that Dr. Scott had mentioned we're going to be exploring soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, I'm going to thank Principal Overly for being here again and turn it over to Debbie Kovacs to talk about staffing.
I think I'm unmuted now, yes?
Yes, you are.
Our last update, we focused on certificated staffing, and we have completed the elementary staffing, and we'll be making adjustments up to this Friday for our stage 4A, and then again for stage 4B. And as Peter mentioned, we are in ongoing conversations with our association leaders as we work toward returning our students. Tonight, you will hear about leaves of absences, and we will focus on classified staffing and substitute support.
Thanks. One of the challenges facing us right now is the increase in staff leaves of absences. So the data on the screen shows both short-term and long-term leaves for classified and certificated staff. Some short-term leaves this year are due to staff estimating when they will get the vaccines or when their own students will be returning to schools. You can see that the number of leaves have increased as we've approached and are approaching stage 3 and approaching the other stages, excuse me. Within 2 weeks, we had an increase of 44 long-term classified leaves and 12 long-term certificated leaves. Now, these numbers are very fluid, with short-term leaves ending or employees changing the duration of their leaves, which will then impact the long-term leave numbers. Resignations and requests for leaves for non-COVID purposes also will affect these numbers. The significant increase in the classified long-term leaves of last week is indicative of the reduced applicant and substitute pools and our ability right now to fill vacancies and cover absences.
Mandy,
Yeah.
before you move on, could you just, for our community and actually for me, could you give a definition of what a short-term leave means and versus what a long-term leave looks like?
Sure. For the purpose of this data, the short term is 6 weeks or less. The long-term leaves are typically through the end of the school year. And we will see some of the short-term leaves either reducing their leaves if they're fortunate to get the immunizations, or increasing them if they need childcare purposes for longer or need to wait out for their health.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Great. Go to the next one. Okay, so to support the return of students, we continue to recall some of our furloughed staff. We recalled additional health room assistants. We recalled crossing guards, custodians, and some food and nutrition staff and drivers. We also increased the health room assistants hours to offer bell-to-bell support for the buildings. Human resources work together, all hands on deck, in constant contact with the principals regarding their vacancies to ensure ample staff were on site and ready for the March 1st return. Excuse me, February 8th, and we're continuing to do so for the March 1st return. I apologize. We were able to quickly hire 16 additional paraeducators and 11 paraeducator subs for the February 8th return. To process these hires quickly during a very busy time for the principals, we offered additional support for the principals and helped with the hiring and interview process more than we ever do, and we'll continue to do that for the next phases as well. Other groups that were impacted by leaves besides the paraeducators, who I've been talking mainly about, are the nurses, the food and nutrition professionals, drivers, and office professionals. So our next steps in preparation for the current stage coming up and even the future ones is we are advertising and recruiting for vacancies through social media, reader boards, parent newsletters, and every possible avenue that we can come up with and that people are suggesting. We're going there, doing that. We're offering substitute and temporary employees up to 6 hours a day positions by combining various 1 hour and 2 hour supervisory positions in order to attract them and offer additional hours. Additionally, we're hiring a cadre of paraeducators to be deployed where the needs arise. And while I mentioned that we're continuing to screen, we're continuing to interview and hire as fast as we can, I do want to point out that the candidate pool for both regular and substitute paraeducator and classified positions is still very shallow. So with that, we continue to look for creative ways to recruit and hire for these positions. It's been a team effort with both human resources, all the administrators around the district, and also our associations. They've all been working together and offering solutions. So we'll continue to focus on these efforts all the way through all the phases in the school year.
All right, at the school board meeting on January 26th, I shared some of the health and safety information with you around our COVID safety handbooks, our attention to social distancing, our attestation procedures, information about our care rooms. And we wanted to provide tonight a brief update on some specific training related topics that assisted in our return to in-person instruction. So in anticipation of our K-1 and our subsequent grade levels for elementary students to return to in-person learning, we developed some training tools that are useful for several audiences. So we recognize that it's not only that our staff that need training, but there are important aspects of returning in this environment that are important for our students and our families as well. So for our staff training, there are topics that apply district-wide, and then there are those that are school-specific. So all of our training was centered around a concept that we've termed a day in the life. That addresses time prior to students arriving at school, upon their arrival, during their classroom instruction, during their meal times and recess, the end of the day and cleanup and so forth. And so each school has nuanced differences in their layouts and their space considerations. And so this document has been significant as a helpful resource for principals for communicating the new structures and routines that have been and are going to continue to keep our students and our staff safe as they return in person. And the EEA leadership as well has given us positive feedback on this particular document. We consider this to be a living document that can be updated to reflect best practices and to maximize clarity as we continue to move forward. For the training topics that apply district-wide, we developed a training video for principals to share with their returning staff members. And it contains the topics that are embedded in the COVID staff safety handbook. That handbook is very, very helpful, but it's also very thorough. And so we wanted our training to really focus down on the highlights and to provide examples and deeper insights that our staff could use for practical use, and then still refer back to the handbook as the detailed reference. We wanted to provide this training to staff at least a week in advance, trying to find that sweet spot of not too much time that goes by where it's still they have that context, but also in enough time for them to have enough planning. So we've also made these available on the Everett Public Schools staff COVID website. And the communications department did a fantastic job of taking the full video, which is about 43 minutes long, and breaking it down into smaller content specific videos that are about 2 to 3 minutes each that people can refer back to at any time. And those are on our website as well. So I know that you're aware of our parent university and the variety of resources that it provides to our families. And one of these areas of information is related also to the COVID health and safety. And so training for our families was adapted from the staff content videos that we created and other resources. It was also broken down by specific topics that are of most interest to our families. And I would say that one of the great highlights for me was that when our elementary counselors collaborated together to create this safely returning to school video, that the audience is our students and their families. And this video is very student friendly, student focused. It's narrated by our elementary counselors, and they have now updated for our as the students that are coming back are just a little bit older, 2nd and 3rd graders, and they're already working on the 4th and 5th grade version of this video as well. And so these and other resources were used by our teachers on the first day of school for the returning students in groups A and B recently, and they practiced them to ensure that the students understood them and felt comfortable with them. So although of course, not completely glitch-free, we were very, very pleased with the recent rollout and how smoothly things went. And as you've heard some examples of that tonight, our teachers and our instructional staff were very well prepared, and the administrative and safety teams were well organized as our students have returned to campus.
We wanted to briefly overview the process of COVID contact tracing with you because we've had some questions about what this looks like. So there's 3 of us in the district that help with the overall contact tracing. Rondi Seberg in HR, Carrie Johnson, who is our nurse, and then myself. We partner with the health district to help keep track of COVID cases and close contacts. And the way this works is once one of us is informed of a positive case, we work with the building COVID supervisor, which is usually the principal, and we figure out when that person was in the building. We have to find out things like when they last were in the building, when they initially had symptoms, when they got tested, when they got the results of their test, and then following the algorithm that the health district sets for us, we help figure out if there was anyone who was deemed a close contact with that person. And then we help inform those close contacts via letters that the health district has provided that they will need to quarantine and for how long. And then we fill all this information out in a spreadsheet and actually provide it to the health district. And then their contact tracers contact each of these people to give them more details about what they need to do, and they do any more follow-up tracing. So we really help with that immediate need. If there's a positive case in the school, we can figure out within the next 15 minutes, 30 minutes, who might need to be asked to go home and quarantine, and what we need to do to help follow up on those cases. And then of course we help implement the appropriate closures and cleanings that are needed. And then we also provide scripting and content for the building principal to be able to share out information as needed and as appropriate. The other piece related to this is the COVID dashboard, which you've seen is now on our website. And this lists out the total COVID cases in the district since we opened buildings at the beginning of January. And right now, we just list out how many staff and how many students overall per week have been tested positive and reported positive in the building since we opened. After we get into stage 4A 1 week afterwards, then we will have enough people in the building that we'll be able to start reporting out by school. But at this point, there's so few people in the building that if we start reporting it out by school, then we can't really guarantee confidentiality of the student or the staff person. So we wait till the numbers get a little higher in the building so we can have a little more confidentiality for that. And so at that point, we will be reporting out COVID cases by school. And that is our presentation for the evening.
Well, thank you. What a great presentation. A lot of really great information, and I appreciate all the detail you've provided tonight. Kathy, since you just most recently presented, I was going to ask you just real quick, is our contact tracing when we report back to Snohomish Health District, does that go into the Washington notification pool where the app is used for, obviously not students because they don't have their cell phones on them, but for like staff?
No, those aren't connected. We did publicize that app is available. We didn't make it mandatory for anyone, of course, but no, our information just goes right to the health department, and they don't give that information towards the app at all.
Okay. And I just wanted to say, I've heard from a couple parents that the new version of the dashboard is a very welcome change from just the total. And I imagine as we get more students back, that it will also be a welcome change when we start reporting out by schools, because I know that's top of mind for parents when they're looking at that data. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to directors. I see Director Mitchell raising a hand.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just have a question about, yeah, Kathy, I appreciate those numbers, like how they are, but I also wonder if we can put them against the percentage in the schools, because if we have 5, but there's only 10 people in the school, that's 50% versus, if we've got 100 people in the school and we have 5, that's what, a half of what, I can't do that math that fast, 2%. But what, is there a standard for percentage versus just total number?
Well, the number of people in a building changes every day. So that would be the challenge of figuring out what your percentage is based on.
Okay.
I mean, we could do an average, but it's not going to give you an exact percentage.
Yeah, but or even just versus, versus the average. So it doesn't give you an exact percent, but just some context to what 5 looks like. I think I just think a context
My
would be
son's
helpful.
college does it by community spread. And so they're comparing the school spread against the community spread. And of course, the school is dramatically lower than what's
Thank you.
happening.
And that's what it is. It's context.
Yeah, it's context.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
for
that's
that.
good input. Thank you.
Yeah. And then my second question, and this is just something I heard from one community member whose spouse is a office manager, is the burden of the phone calls. I guess a lot of kindergarten families calling, not using the app, not using the website, and then also the calls that come in on the security door, that this spouse reported almost a breaking point. And I just said, okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll bring it back. But I appreciate what Brian said, that the usage of the internet, but it was just this question, uncertain parents and the security door just a burden on the front office staff. Was what, what are you guys hearing? Because I just have my N of 1 from a spouse.
I don't know if that question is for me. Is there a?
I don't know if it's for you or if it's for Mandy or if it's for one of the, like Sally, an administrator, somebody that's hearing directly from the staff.
Well, I have labor
Yeah, I
management
think it's been a-
meetings with many of the groups, and I have not heard that directly
Okay.
from any of them, but I will check in.
Okay, because, and again, it's just an N of 1, so that's where it was just, is this a spouse protecting a spouse, or is it a real problem?
Right.
So thank you.
And if they can let their principal know, that could help us too. When we talk to the principals.
Okay, I can let you know what school it is, Ian.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
do know what school it is, but I don't want to publicize it
Sure,
here.
later, let me know. Let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I guess this question is for Brian. So earlier when you were showing us the attendance numbers, how are we tracking, and I'm sure you told me this before, I just need to be reminded, how are we tracking absences on asynchronous days? Because those numbers looked alarmingly high.
Well, it depends on the teachers take attendance like they would on a normal following the rules of asynchronous. If the number of students that they've engaged with within that period of time. So we continue to follow up with the teachers on making sure they're following the rules around what counts as attending and not attending.
Mm-hmm. So it's mostly kids not engaging with the material within what's the specified time frame, within that day, within the week?
Yeah, within that period of time, that 24-hour period of time, and then they there needs to be some type of interaction. So using Canvas, our ability to track and see if there's been activity in Canvas, or did they engage in another method, another way of engaging in the material, and then the teacher can go back within and update their attendance to indicate that they had attended that day.
So maybe the follow-up to this is Dr. Bowden or Dr. Scott or somebody. So those absentee rates are pretty high, is what it looks like to me, at least from the numbers, and I know they're constantly in flux. So what sort of kind of follow-up are we giving with the students and the teachers to make sure that we're addressing these, that they know how this attendance is counted?
Well, I think that's a daily reminder, both through the teacher and through the office staff as well, so that we're trying to leverage every bit of communication technology that we have, and then that personal touch as well. So this is just another layer, I think, and it's an important layer of ensuring that we're monitoring attendance in this fashion.
And I would just like to chime in that I think it's one of the reasons that our secondary schools specifically are looking at things like that tier 3, that targeted support, where students who are engaged synchronously, if they're having difficulties engaging in the asynchronous, that's why we're looking at how do we bring small groups or small cohorts of students in so that we can give them some personalized support and attention. Because a lot of times what we have is, if kids are kind of off on their own, but if there's an adult that cares about them, or at least has a connection with them, who's physically in the room that says, hey, what can I help you to do? How do you organize? We find that kids will engage in that activity. So it's one of the primary reasons why we're looking at that targeted support system. And that's how we're looking at some of those students for that program, which is, students who are in a kind of a failure to engage, like they're having a difficult time engaging in that async. Those are the ones that we're the most worried about. And that's who we're trying to scoop up with those programs.
So does it seem that the majority of those non-engagers are in the secondary school range, or is it kind of evenly spread? Do we have that information?
I don't know if Brian can speak or Dr. Scott, if you can
No,
speak.
I don't know that we don't have the level that we're getting in terms of being able to split out asynchronous remote and synchronous remote like we're being able to do here in elementary. But we will. I mean, we will ultimately.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, can I jump on that topic real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you, Director Berg. Because I was looking at that attendance data before tonight, and it just didn't have a lot of meaning to me, to be honest, because I'm used to looking at or hearing about attendance in percentages, and then I know that what attendance is this year looks very different than what attendance has been in prior years. And so what I'm trying to understand as a director is, how far off the mark are we right now? So attendance was never great, beforehand, and we've put in a lot of programs and things to improve that. And so now all of a sudden we're in a remote environment, and a lot of those measures have gone by the wayside. And I'm just trying to understand, is attendance way off right now, or are we doing okay? I mean, I'm just trying to get sort of a generalization of what it looks like compared to pre-pandemic. And that's maybe not an answer for tonight because it's, percentages and looking at the data, but I'm just trying to get a big picture of where we are with attendance. Is it terrible? Are we doing okay? What does that look like?
I think we could probably put a different level of analysis in the Friday report, President Mason. I think we can also say that and we've in past presentations, we've talked about the OSPI definition being fairly, it's a low standard, right? It's participation. So we wanted to go deeper in terms of assessing and addressing overall engagement. I think there's nobody on this call would probably disagree that it's the most difficult to get an accurate picture in asynchronous, the level of engagement. I think because if a student is weighing in on Canvas or Google Classroom, that counts as being present, right? So the idea of how long are you there, what are you producing, those start then.
And I imagine that varies hugely, student to student, where some students are maybe, not as present, but engaging offline, tremendously and doing fine. And then the reverse might be true. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And any sort of insight that you could provide would be helpful, just in terms of breaking down those numbers a little bit into sort of big picture thoughts. Okay, Director Berg, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's the same kind of topic. And I guess I was really happy that Director Nichols brought it up, because as a parent, I've really struggled with what this means in the asynchronous days. And I think one of the comments that we got via email to the board was about the word asynchronous, right? That's a really big word. And I think for folks who aren't in education, it's a lot to unpack to understand what's expected on the asynchronous day. Honestly, I had to write it on my hand myself, right? Because I'm a parent. And when the district went to asynchronous, I'm like, what does that mean? And, and like, I'm a school board member. So I can only imagine if you're a parent, you're working, you're stressed out, and all of a sudden people are saying, do this on an asynchronous day to be counted for credit. At some point you just tune out, right? And you're just like, I need to get dinner on the table. I need to get my kids fed. And it seems like they're doing fine in school. So if there was maybe a way to communicate better to families what asynchronous is, i.e. this is your Canvas day. Because what I finally had explained to me by my kids was that we just have to like do something on that day. It doesn't matter really what it is. And I'm sure it does matter, but in a teenager's brain, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just checking in on my Canvas page, or they listed something else. And so that made sense. And so in my brain, that asynchronous day is a Canvas day. And as long as they're checking in on Canvas, doing something in Canvas, my assumption is, and I've yet to be proven wrong, is that they're being counted as attending. I would think that's a way simpler message, or something like that might be simpler for our families to understand and digest and get behind, versus what do I do on an asynchronous day? So I'm wondering, with those attendance numbers being so far off on asynchronous days, could it be a communication problem? Are we hearing from teachers that the kids are completely checking out, or is it just they're not checking in the way that the teachers want them to?
I think I can answer part of that question, Director Berg, which is, I know that that when students are if students are not engaging in an asynchronous, I know that teachers are working really hard to make sure that they are touching base with them. My personal experience is with my 12-year-old, who, if she misses something, her teacher is emailing her or CCing me and kind of keeping up to date on some of those pieces. So I think teachers are working hard to really capture students' work wherever they are. They also understand that some students may have a challenge in accessing some of those asynchronous lessons if they're having an issue with supporting their younger siblings and things like that. But I think teachers have been working hard to try and ensure that they are capturing students who need support in asynchronous as best they possibly can, including on some of those asynchronous days on Wednesdays, doing on-demand student support as well.
And I would add one other thing to that. I think when just doing the calculations, and that's what we'll put in the Friday report, just the calculations here, out of 10,000 students present, say on the 3rd of February, if we're looking at 188 or so kids that were marked absent out of that, I think what the schools are trying to do is figure out why are they not connecting or checking in at all. But on the whole, the percentage is quite good, right? But we really still have to, the heavy lifting is figuring out what kinds of, just because you're marked present here on an async day, what's actually happening? How engaged are you? Are you completing assignments, etc.?
And I guess, and that's perfect. That sounds like a great way to approach it. And I guess my only ask is, could we possibly think of calling it something a little different? Not changing our entire vocabulary, but maybe communicating it in a way that's a little more accessible to our families. They know what's meant by asynchronous learning on those days, so that they could maybe do a little more with their kiddos.
Dr. Scott, can I just add a quick piece of the attendance on those asynchronous days, Director Berg? When you notice on the 8th, for example, the N has gotten a lot smaller because the A group kids are now in in-person learning. So the N size starting on February 8th has gotten that much smaller. So the numbers really start changing February 8th. So we could think of a better way to get this information to you, to President Mason's point, but that is where we start to see the big change.
Going back to the asynchronous, maybe we could put in Parent University too, like what it's supposed to be. So when we think about that the next few days in our Parent University video, we could explain more detail what asynchronous is.
I'm just going to add, I appreciate that, because I have struggled with those terms this entire time. So thank you for that suggestion, April.
Kathy, is there any plan to follow up with parents and do another kind of round of parent surveys as regards to how the hybrid model is going, what supports they are needing and not getting, what things are working well, those types of things?
We have talked about it a little bit. We were doing these monthly Let's Connect sessions, and the ones that are upcoming were supposed to be coming out of each school instead of out of the district. So that way they can get more direct feedback to the school itself. But it probably is a good idea to do a general one for just overall district as well.
I know on the board side anyways, it's easy to get inundated with the folks who are letting you know what's not working for them. And so I want to try to figure out, is this a systemic issue, or is it just kind of, we're not going to please anybody, no matter what, everybody, no matter what we do. So that type of input would be great.
Right.
Director Lassane? Oh. We lost her.
No, I'm here. It's my finger, I guess. It's too big for the button. But anyway, no, I have no questions. I think when we start talking about changing asynchronous and synchronous, we start losing people. But if we can define what asynchronous means and be very upfront with, wait a minute, when we talk about synchronous, this is when you are actually seeing somebody on the screen. Asynchronous when you're not seeing somebody and you just have to open a folder or something like that. But if we start changing titles and names, we may end up losing people.
Although you have to be careful when you say not seeing someone on the screen, because we have 80,000 videos now.
Videos, yes, videos. I know, yeah. We have to be very specific.
See someone on the screen, it just might not be live.
Live, yes. It's Memorex, not live. We can make it funny. Use a commercial. It's Memorex. I think a lot of people probably don't remember that.
Dated, I hate to say.
That's dated.
What about Betamax? Can I pull out my old Betamax?
Let's get them on those floppy things. No. Okay.
On the tech front, actually, I just realized I had one other question for Brian. So we heard that one teacher, I think it was either Tammy or blanking on the name right now. They're talking about how they had students coming in and we're just figuring out how to utilize the tech for the first time. And I know we've had this wonderful help desk you guys have set up and all of these different ways. Have we considered at all any sort of kind of in-person tech tutorials for remote learners? Is that something maybe that we can do to address those type of issues?
We have not, but that's a good idea of having something like that on site and available. You mean really in person? You mean the
right?
Okay.
Right. Yeah, because if they're not, I mean, I guess short of remoting into their desktop, to show them how to use these things, but especially if there's language barriers or things like that, they might need that in-person touch.
We do have at the secondary level, we have where they can set up appointments to come in and sit down with the tech. We could do that exact same model at the elementary level.
Okay. Are there any further questions or discussion? I'm not seeing any or hearing any. So I'm going to end tonight. My favorite quote of the night comes from Brian. And I actually tried to write it down quickly, so I might have missed a word or two, but video content has become integral to student instruction. And I love that because so my two boys are now in college, but all through high school, that's all they did is video content on YouTube, Khan Academy, wherever. And so now we have arrived with student devices, teacher instruction, and this is, we talked about this in our last meeting of some of the things, I think it was last meeting, some of the things that we'd love to see carry forward. And to me, that is one of the integral ones that we will definitely, I think, is here to stay. So I'm super excited about that. So we have come to the end of our 90-minute meeting here. I want to say thank you again for everyone being here tonight. I feel like this was really informative. I hope the directors got out of it what I did, and all your questions were answered. I'm seeing a thumbs up. So with that, it's time to go to dinner. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.